Hey guys, this is going to be my full review on the A118C. Now this camera has been known as the A118C or the B40 or just the A118, but the C designates that this model has the capacitor, so there is no B40 with a capacitor that I'm aware of, but there is also the Street Guardian version, the SG9665GC, which also has a capacitor in it. The Street Guardian version does have better hardware and it is more expensive. I will talk about that later, but for now let's just look at the A118C. So I bought this from Amazon from Spytech. So this is a very popular camera. It has a very discreet wedge design. So it mounts right up against the glass, and like most dash cameras nowadays, it has full 1080p, 30 frames per second, and it does have 15 megabits per second, which is real nice. So at first glance you'd think that the Street Guardian version is just a repackaged one, but it does actually have a better sensor, better processor, and it's pretty much a different camera other than the body. But it's also $200, and you can't buy it without GPS, so you get a much more full package. But what's nice about the A118C is if you don't want GPS, you can buy it for $80, and that doesn't include any extras, but you save money if you didn't want those extras anyways. So this is just a pretty basic fold-out manual. I'm not going to go through it as usual. Some of the stuff that's included is very similar to the Street Guardian version. So this is to install above the camera to hide the cables, and this is actually what it mounts on. I'll show that later. But here you can see these are just some cable clips if you want to wire the cables somewhere. Some string if you want to remove the mount. You can use it to saw through the 3M adhesive. This is just a data cable. If you don't have any sort of micro SD card adapter, you can use that to hook it up to your computer. And here is the power cord, which uses mini USB. If you wanted to hardwire it, you could buy either a hardwiring kit that just goes straight to mini USB, or one with a 12-volt cigar socket, and you can use the power cord that came with it. So let's take a look at the camera now. Now this is my third wedge design camera actually. My first one was the non-capacitor Street Guardian version. I really like this design, it's one of my favorite. So the plate mounts onto it like that, clicks in, and then this lens is actually rotatable. So you should be able to get this mounted on your windshield of pretty much any car, and the lens will be right up against the glass, reducing any reflection in your windshield, which is a real advantage of these wedge designed cameras. So like the new Street Guardian model, there is a little bit of reflection or shininess to the lettering. The previous A118 or Street Guardian did not have that, so I assume that's just generic across all of these. You will notice when you look at the lenses though that the lenses are very different. Like I said before, the Street Guardian model costs a lot more, but when you look at the night footage you can definitely tell there's a big difference in quality. So both of these have the option of a GPS which mount to the top right there. This one didn't include it, so it just has the power cord that plugs into the top. And here you can see there's a microphone on the side, a micro SD card slot. That's where you rotate the lens. That's where the plate mounts. So you can see on the top there's the GPS in and audio video out next to the power. There's a mic button. I had mine set to mic off. So there's a power button if you want to manually turn it off, but it will turn on automatically when your car starts on. The menu button, which we'll go over in a second. This is an event record button, so if you see something very cool or an accident, you can hit that button and it'll lock that clip. And there's the record button. And the mic button again. So here on the side we do have a reset button if it freezes, and both this and the new Street Guardian have these new ventilation holes on the side, so that should help keep it cool. So let's go ahead and take a look at the menu, and you do actually have to stop the recording to get into the menu. So the menu is pretty much just like most other Chinese cameras. Looks really similar. Got the resolution settings here. Has a lot of options, but in reality you're just going to want to use 1080p 30. We got loop recording for how long you want your recording segments to be. Wide dynamic range. The exposure levels. Next we have the motion detection, which I did test, and like a lot of these Chinese manufactured cameras, it doesn't start recording until after it senses the motion, so it's not that great for parking, but it does work. So we got some audio and date settings, and the GPS and G sensor setting. So it's not as full featured as the Street Guardian version, but it still has pretty much everything you need. In the second menu there's some other standard settings like date and time, which I typically don't set on my cameras. Many people point that out. The time zone. I am Central Time, so I will go ahead and set that. Auto power off. And this, what it does is turns the camera off after a certain number of minutes if the camera's not recording. I got that mixed up in my previous video. The beep sound, language, comes with a lot of different languages, which is always nice. A TV mode. In North America you want NTSC, and frequency for North America you want 60 Hertz. If you have it set to 50 Hertz, street lights and other lights can look like they're flickering. Now the screensaver sets how long the screen will stay on until it actually goes black. Format memory card, default settings, car numbers if you want to set your license plate, or maybe if you have a fleet of company vehicles you can put your car fleet number. And we have the version. So it's pretty much a standard Chinese camera. Has a lot of the same menu items, and the menu looks exactly the same as a lot of other Chinese cameras. Here's what it looks like mounted in a car. Now I didn't use that cable hider. I do actually use one above my mirror, but that's hiding cables for other cameras. So as you can see though, it's really close to the glass, and that really helps reduce reflection, like I said before. So my window is really slanted. A lot of people think I'm not even mounting the cameras on my windshield, but I assure you this camera was exactly where I just showed it to you. And overall, I think this camera has very good day quality. The 15 megabits per second definitely helps, and again, having the camera lens right up against the window helps too. One thing I really like is the lens isn't too wide of an angle. If it's too wide of an angle, it starts to get really hard to read anything or see anything on the far edges of the screen. A lot of cheaper cameras will have really wide angle lenses because a lot of consumers will think wider is better. But in a lot of ways, it's not actually good to have a really wide angle lens because it starts to distort the image quite a lot. So I did have one issue with this camera. I let it sit in my car for a while, maybe 4 hours or so. It wasn't plugged in, it wasn't even turned on, it was actually sitting in a box on my car seat. but it got really hot, and when I recorded with it immediately after, the image quality was noticeably worse. You can see here, when you look at the signs or the trees, everything looks really blurry, and a lot of this is likely just because the camera was so hot from sitting in my car for 4 or 5 hours. This is something to definitely consider, and this isn't something that only happens to this camera, but I leave all my cameras in my car all the time, and I had never noticed this before with any of my other cameras. The next few following days I started recording more with it, and it was just fine though. So this was taken after the really blurry footage, and it looks very crisp and clear again. Even against harsh light, like looking straight at the sun, it does okay. It's pretty dark behind the cars, sort of silhouetting the cars or the building, but for an $80 dash camera, you can't really complain much about this day video quality. Now at night, it fares okay. This footage is really harsh. It's dark and rainy. But as you can see, it's not the worst thing out there. You can still make out the cars a bit, but you're likely not going to be able to read license plates out on the highway at night, at least without your headlights shining directly on someone's license plate. And I'll include a link to the comparison between this camera and the Street Guardian, because I did compare them directly at night, and you'll actually see how much darker this cheaper camera is. So if you want a better quality version, I would suggest the Street Guardian model. But again, it's $200 and only comes with a GPS and several other accessories. But the A118C is a great value. It still has that great, discreet, stealthy wedge design. And the day footage is perfectly adequate. I think it looks a lot better than some other more expensive cameras even during the day. So overall, I would highly recommend this camera. I think for under $100, this is probably my favorite camera. I've always really loved this wedge design, and one of the issues in the past was the fact that it had a battery. So now that there's a capacitor version, I think this is definitely a camera to take an interest in. I would recommend this over the G1WC any day because I really hate the G1WC's form factor. So if you're looking for something under $100, I would say go for this one. But if you really do want higher quality video, especially at night, I would say check out the Street Guardian SG9665GC. It looks just like this, but again, has better video quality. As usual, if you like this video or my other videos, I would appreciate if you hit like and subscribe. And if you have any suggestions or videos you'd like me to do, I would definitely appreciate your input, or any cameras you'd like to see me review. I can see if I can get a hold of them or purchase them myself. So drive safe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.